I want to take some of the ideas that were embedded in the psalm and were embedded in some of our readings this morning. And what I want to do is I want to take those particular things and I want to use them to proclaim an astounding truth, a revelation which I'm sure you would never have worked out by yourself, a truth of great magnitude. Now, we haven't known each other for very long at all, but I wonder if you've actually gathered a particular insight that I'm going to share with you this morning. My insight is this: the Lord, He is God, and I am not. Isn't that deep? Getting value for money this morning, aren't you? The Lord, He is God, and I am not. In fact, allow me to be a little bit more inclusive with that statement and say to you, the Lord, He is God, and we are not. My difficulty is this: despite the fact that we know that to be true, we spend an awful lot of time trying to be God, trying to outwork the characteristics of God. And I want to suggest to you this morning that this particular Messiah complex is not at all useful and is actually quite damaging to most people. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, to understand that, let me outline for you the characteristics of God, the big three. Number one, God is everywhere, all the time. I can't be. Number two, God knows all things, but I don't. And number three, He is all-powerful, but I am not. And we have to learn that lesson, that the Lord, He is God, but I am not. The Lord, He is God, but we are not. Let me see if I can illustrate it to you further. God fills all time and all space. God's love is everywhere, all the time. Psalm 139. If I go to the highest heavens, you are there. If I make my home in the depths of the earth, you are there. Not even the darkness can hide me, for in your eyes, day and night are the same. God is everywhere. His love fills all time and space. But I can't be everywhere all the time. I can't fill all time and space, and neither can you. But we still try to. We still try to be everywhere. We still try to actually fill all time and space. And I want to say to you this morning, it is not possible for frail humanity to be God. And we have to stop trying. There are many Church of Wales vicars and curates who will clock up 80 hours a week. And when they completed a recent survey for us, they said that they work 80 hours a week, and at the end of the week they still don't feel they've done the things they needed to do. Now, that's not an exclusive statistic to vicars and curates. Most people in most walks of life live a similar pattern to this, trying to work endless hours and reaching the end of the week and still having a to-do list which reaches to the floor. Still having a to-do list which leaves them thinking that they haven't accomplished everything that they wanted to accomplish in that week. Now, the obvious result of this particular thing is that strange 20th and 21st century word, burnout. We burn out. We are not able to do anything. So many professions have so many of its workforce off with stress leave. It is a considerable thing, but it's birthed out of this. To work as many hours as you possibly can, to sleep less and less, but yet to end the week feeling we haven't accomplished all that we should. And my big problem with this is not the burnout aspect, although of course that's incredibly important. But it's the very subtle issue embedded in it. The subtle issue that we're simply not there. We're simply not present. And the greatest gift you can ever bring to any meeting, any gathering, is your presence. Your wholehearted presence in the room. I am here. But we're not there any longer. Our minds are racing with so many things. I learned to snowboard a few years back. I learned to snowboard primarily because I knew so many people who were skiing. And I worked out that if I became a snowboarder, that I could wipe out the skiers as I came down with such terrible behaviour on the slope. But as I was learning, the interesting thing about snowboarding is, of course, both your feet are fixed on that board. And the amount of time that I spent with my face planted in the snow was really quite excessive. Until in the end, the person who was trying to teach me how to do this had to say to me, Mark, what you have to do is stop thinking about things which are not happening. And that was the reality of the situation. I'd be quite merrily making my way down the slope, and then my mind would wander to the person I was going to visit, or the communion for a person trapped at home that I hadn't done, or the sermon that I was preparing for the following Sunday, or the endless meetings which I hadn't written an agenda for. And the result of those thoughts moving in that direction was yet again face down in the snow. And so the advice was stop thinking about the things which are simply not happening. And it was so important to me. And it's one of the reasons why I like snowboarding, and most recently, because I've noticed there's not a lot of snow around here. Most recently, I've taken up paddleboarding, which I'm enjoying as well. But the same principle holds true. I can't paddleboard and think about 10,000 other things. I'm simply not good enough. And so I like it because my mind has to be focused on the next stroke, the next move, the next maneuver. And so I like it because it keeps me fixed in a certain place in a certain time. But I don't think this problem is unique to me. I wonder if it applies to you as well. Middle of your day, doing whatever it is you do, but your mind's all over the place. Playing out possible scenarios, thinking about the next conversation, thinking about if you say this to them and they say this to you, what will you then say to them? But you're not present. You're living in a different place. And I am under no illusion that some of you are falling into that exact trap this morning. You're sitting there looking very attentive, and you're smiling at the right moments, and some of you are even laughing at the right moments. Some of you, however, are laughing at the wrong moments, but we'll let that go. But are you here? Or is your mind thinking about, is it chicken or lamb later? And have I put it on too early, or is it going to be too late? And since this is only his first point, I definitely put it on too early. And these are the things which are running through our mind. What am I going to do tomorrow morning? And the result of this is we're not here. We're not present. And our biggest gift is our ability to be there, to be in the room, to be present. And I don't know if you find this difficult, but let me say to you, if you're with a person, then be with the person. If you're making a phone call, then make the phone call. If you're playing with the children or grandchildren or godchildren, play with the children or grandchildren or godchildren. Witnessed so many people in the park pushing the child on the swing with one hand while answering the text message with the thumb and still trying to have a conversation. That's impressive, but they're not there. So if we're doing something, let us do it. And I've learned a particular skill in this area which I'll share with you this morning, which you might want to take away. I've started taking a hammer with me to all my lunch appointments. And the reason for that is when they put that mobile phone down in front of them, facing upwards, so when that text arrives, which is invariably more interesting than me, and it drags their attention away from the conversation so that they can look at it, and sometimes even answer it, what I've decided to do hammer and smash their phone. And I think it's going to have two results. I think, first of all, I'm going to get their undivided attention. And secondly, I suspect I'm going to have far less lunch appointments. So I think a result on both levels, but the ability to be there. The episode in Exodus where Moses sees the burning bush, the Jewish commentators who wrote about this, the rabbis, they make an observation. They say that the bush was always burning, but it took a long time before Moses was walking slow enough and being attentive enough to turn and see the bush. It's a really interesting take on that particular passage. But I wonder how many miracles we miss every day because we're not walking slow enough or we're not being attentive enough. The desire to fit as much as we can into the limited space. And I do indeed struggle with this. I've had to teach myself something. It's a little formula, it's just 2 words long. I have to say to myself, justice. And when my mind is beginning to wander in a conversation, I have to say to myself, no, right now I'm doing justice. And drag myself back and be in the room, to be present. Justice. And it is beginning to work for me, but it's terribly hard work. I found this area very, very hard. But it's such an important thing to recognize that this moment contains all that I need. And that breath I just took was a gift. And every breath I take is a gift. And to be there, and to be grateful for every moment. It's a skill which we don't seem to easily have at this point in the 21st century. So, point number 1, God is everywhere, I am not. Point number 2, equally deep and meaningful, God knows all things, I do not. I've run a lot of church alpha courses where people come to explore their faith together. And I've discovered that they have one incredibly powerful response when that conversation gets so tricky. And my response is this: I'm sorry, I don't know. And it's working so well. And that level of honesty is quite disarming. I was in a group with somebody else leading. And somebody asked the question, if God created the earth in 6 days, and the earth is only tens of thousands of years old, how come there are dinosaurs? And I smiled and waited to see what the response would be, and it came this way. The answer was, God planted them there to test us. And I didn't know how to respond, but it's a very stupid response. It's one of those you say to people on alpha courses that there's no such thing as a stupid question. That was certainly a stupid response. Because of course the answer is, I don't know. And I listened to the response of the Billy Graham Foundation, and I like the Billy Graham Foundation. But their response when they were in interview just after 9/11 happened, and they were asked, why did God allow this? And there was many words about God being pushed out of America and pushed out of the schooling system, but they sounded so harsh and so devoid of compassion given the situation. But they felt that they had to provide an answer. In some way, they had to defend God. I listened to a recording recently of the Archbishop of Wales speaking in 1966 after the Alabama disaster. And he said these words: I'm only daring to speak about this at all because because I once lost a child. I have nothing to say that will make any sense of the horror which happened today. All I know is the words in my Bible about God's promise to be alongside us have never lost their meaning for me. And now we have to work in God's name for the future. You see the difference? It's not an attempt to provide an answer for the areas which we just don't know the answer to. I've spent 6 years of my life in theological college. My PhD is in theology. And I promise you that that whole period has taught me how little I actually know. It's actually just revealed to me how little my knowledge is and why I should be saying, sorry, I don't know, just a little bit more. Otherwise, the attempt is almost an arrogance. God knows all the answers to all questions, but I don't. And we have to stop trying to be God. And my final point. So let's do the quick recap. God is everywhere. We are not. God knows all things. We don't. And finally, God is all powerful, but I am not. See, I am a Christian. That means that the sun always shines on me. That means I have a permanent coat hanger smile. That means I'm always well. I'm never depressed. I'm never miserable. I'm never sad. I never doubt. And if you turn the lights off right now, I would glow in the dark. Oh dear. To get caught into the trap of believing that. But actually, I'm just made of frail humanity like everybody else in the room. I am not all-powerful. I simply am not. There's a lovely conversation in the children's book, The Velveteen Rabbit. And it's a conversation between the skin horse and the rabbit. And the conversation is about what it means to be real. God is powerful. I am not. To try and feign being all-powerful is simply not to be real. And this is how the conversation goes. Real isn't how you are made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you when a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you. Then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. But when you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up, or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily, or who have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes have dropped out, and you get loose in the joints, and you begin to feel very shabby indeed. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to the people who simply don't understand. My favourite 20th century philosopher, Abraham Joshua Heschel, put it this way: remember that you're not a machine, you're a work of art. Too many of us live as if we're machines. We're not machines.